Okay. Everyone, welcome to the two-page marketing plan. I'm really excited to go through this with you today. We've got a lot of ground to cover. As usual, this is an implementation hour, which means you should be in a quiet space, have your two-page marketing plan template available, have a pen ready, be ready to focus. We're going to spend about 15 minutes going through the theory, and then the other 45 minutes are going to be spent actually putting this into practice. The idea is at the end of the session, you'll have a really nice, good start on your two-page marketing plan. So before we get into teaching the plan, though, let's talk a little bit about why this is actually necessary. So the first challenge we have is it's really tough to stick with some kinds of marketing over the course of an entire 12 months. This 12 months is a pretty long time. And what ends up happening to us is if we don't have a plan in place, we may not know if certain tactics are working or not as we expect. As a result, if a tactic doesn't produce right away, it's really easy for us to start second-guessing ourselves. And what happens next is we get distracted, we get bored, we find some other shiny object, or we just simply give up. So what ends up happening is we end up starting a lot of things, but we actually don't follow through on very many of them. Sorry, just monitoring the chat window here. The bottom line is it's really easy to bite off more than we can chew, both from a dollar perspective and from a time perspective. We all know people that have bankrupted themselves, right? They've bankrupted their businesses because of excessive marketing that got no results. It's very expensive, very time-consuming, and it failed horribly. Likewise, we also know owners who are so busy selling their services and promoting their companies that they don't have enough time to provide great service for their clients. So we don't want to be either of those people. We want to have, ideally, a much better situation than that, right? So the first issue there is we're simply not committed to any kind of a plan. We're just making decisions willy-nilly based on what we think might be working or not working at any given time. Creates a lot of stress, we spend a lot of money, we waste a lot of time. That's the first challenge. The second one, and this is related, is most marketing activities tend to be front-loaded. And what I mean by that is when you start something new, there's two things that go on in marketing. One is there's just a learning curve, right? Whenever you're starting anything new, there's a learning curve. Marketing is no exception. So it takes more money and more time up front while you're trying to figure out how that tactic is going to work for you, your message, and your market. So that's the first challenge. The second issue with regards to this front-loading thing, where it takes up more time and more money up front, is that a lot of marketing is based on momentum, which means you really have to get it started and get it going, and then once it's going, it starts to produce results. Once it starts to produce results, and once you figure out what works and what doesn't work and how to run it, then it takes less effort, it takes less money, and you actually get better results. When I talk about this with a lot of my one-on-one clients, they say, well, what about networking? Because networking requires a consistent amount of time all the time, right? When you go to your meetings once a week, once a month, whatever it happens to be. As it turns out, if you're networking right, and if you're networking aggressively, it is very much a front-loaded activity, because what ends up happening when you join a new networking group is you have to spend a lot of time actually building those relationships, and it can take up to a year to build those relationships. Once those relationships are built, then you don't have to invest as much time outside of the meetings. The referral and the deal flow works naturally because your relationships are already in place. So networking actually has a huge front-loaded component. It can last for a year or even more than the other activities. So anyway, that's an aside, but because we're starting, because we're stopping, because we're following through, or because we're not following through, I should say, we end up paying this upfront cost in terms of money and time over and over and over again. And because we're stopping before we get through that, we're not getting that much of a return on our time. And so we end up spending more money, spending more time, and getting less return, right? We don't want that at all. The bottom line is every time we think about switching to something else from a marketing standpoint, we're going to incur more time and more money. And so we want to be careful about how we do that. Next challenge is if these efforts are not actually integrated together and they don't play well together, what ends up happening is you end up targeting different groups of people with these different offers. You could be offering different things. You might have different messaging. You might have different branding. It's targeting different audiences. They're not really coordinated, so they go out at unsynchronized times. So it's sometimes you're oversaturating your market. Maybe you send them an email, send them maybe something in the post, and there's a phone call that happens in the same week. And that happens all the time. Or you're not doing anything at all, and you're totally neglecting the market. The bottom line is that when you do that, when all the marketing efforts are helter-skelter and they're all over the place, none of them are really being done particularly well. If you're doing electronic marketing, whether it's blogging or some kind of email marketing, what have you, those take time, they take effort to do properly. If you're doing networking, it takes time and it takes effort to build and deliver your message and build those relationships. If you're doing speaking, you've got to prepare your talks, you've got to queue up those talks in advance, they have to be with the right people and so on. So if you're doing a lot of different things, they're not coordinated, and there's no coherent overarching vision to what it is you're trying to achieve, you're not going to do any of them well, and you're not going to get the results that you want. And what ends up happening is at the end of the year, you've gone through your 12 years and you're looking back, or 12 months rather, and you're looking back over the past year, you just didn't get the results you wanted. You spent a lot of money, you invested a lot of time, but mostly you got junk in return. So your best source continues to be referrals. Referrals are great. The challenge with referrals, though, is that they can be unpredictable at times, and it puts a real cap on your ability to grow because only a certain number of people are ever going to refer you business. So if you want to grow that, you've got to have some other tactics in place. For those of you who are Niner fans like myself, annual disappointment is something, unfortunately, we're getting used to. But it doesn't have to be that way. There are some benefits to having a written plan, and I'm really focused on the written part of the written plan, not a plan in your head. This actually has to be something that is written out on paper. And the reason for that is writing makes things real. When you put something down on paper, whether it's typed out or whatever, but if you can pick it up and you can hold it and you can touch it and you can study it and you can give it to somebody else, that makes it real. It makes it real for you, and it makes it real for your brain. So when we're talking about a plan, we're talking about something in writing, not something that you're just kind of thinking about, okay? And there's huge opportunity in doing that. The first thing is that it gives you the mental willpower and discipline to commit and stick with long-term marketing. Because you have a plan, you have more confidence in what it is you're trying to do. You understand why you're investing that time and why you're investing that money. You understand that there's a specific return you're trying to get. And so that gives you the confidence to not second guess yourself. And it gives you the discipline to stick with it over time. And if you ever think about adding something else to your plan, you can always take out your plan because it's written down, look at it and go, do I need to take something out and replace it with this? And if so, how is it going to impact my overall plan? So you can actually plan for adjustments really, really well. But probably the biggest benefit, like I think we talked about, is it gives us the ability to resist those bright, shiny objects, those squirrel things that we all love to chase that are so exciting that hopefully can get us a lot of leads really, really fast, right? It gives us the power to resist that and stay focused on our plan. The second thing you get is because you're focused and you create a plan up front, you're actually going to be far more efficient about how you use and invest your money and your time with regards to marketing. And this goes back to that point I made earlier about that upfront cost. You're going to be paying that cost, but then you're going to stick with your marketing even when those costs come down. And you'll start to see that return on your investment over time, especially with long-term marketing, things like networking. So when you are in this mode of you have a plan, it's going to last for about a year, and you're sticking to it, you're going to see after 3 months, 6 months, what have you, you're going to see the amount of time you invest probably go down. You're going to see your success rates probably go up, and you're going to see your marketing investments probably go down. So those are all great things for our business. You spend less money, you spend less time, and you get better leads, which is absolutely what we want. So the other thing is, when you're putting together a plan, you have a really nice opportunity to make sure that plan is in sync and that those marketing efforts all blend together. So we're targeting our ideal client with everything. We're targeting one offering that we're bringing to the table, and all the various tactics are choreographed together to provide a result. And if we think about this as an example, instead of a lot of individual brush strokes on a canvas, they actually come together and make a painting. By the way, what painting is this? Any ideas? Go ahead and type in the chat box if you know the name of the painting and who painted it. It's one of my favorites. So here's the benefit to actually having a marketing plan. At the end of the year, instead of looking back and being totally disappointed with what you've got, Terry says, looks like a Van Gogh. Yes, absolutely, Terry. It's called The Starry Night, one of Van Gogh's most famous paintings. So nice job. So what was I saying? Yes, so instead of looking back and being disappointed with your results, instead of being disappointed with your investment of time and money, now you're going to get one of three outcomes. The first outcome is you're actually going to hit your target for the quality leads that you wanted. If you hit your target for quality leads, you're going to hit your target for revenue. The second thing you might get out of it, let's say you don't get the first and your marketing fails. Okay. You'll still gain valuable insights into marketing that doesn't work for you. You'll never waste that time and effort in those marketing things again. In the course of figuring that out, you've probably stumbled across some things that actually do work for you. And the third, and this is what most often happens, is you actually get both. You hit your target for quality leads, and you get valuable insights into the marketing that doesn't work for you, and you figure out what marketing does work for you. This is the most common outcome. So based on everything that I've talked about so far, what's been most valuable to you? Just go ahead and type it in the chat box right now. And by the way, when we think annual party, I like to think about the Dubs. And I don't know about you, but I'd love to end up the year like the Golden State Warriors and not like the current form of the Niners. Question again, what's been most valuable to you so far? So Terry says activity. Okay. I don't know that we talked about that. Okay, well, in the interest of time, we're just going to go ahead and move on. Yeah, no problem, Terry. We'll get back to it. I was just asking what, if anything, you've gotten from everything we've talked about for the last 15 minutes or so. Let's just keep on going. So as we move through, there's three keys that you're going to need so you can get the most out of. Okay, Terry says consistency and synchronization. Great. Okay, and I actually just want to do a quick check. Are you guys actually able to see the slides on my screen? Just type a quick Y in the checkbox. Okay, good, perfect. Super. Okay, so there's three keys that you need to get the most out of this planning exercise that we're going to be going through. The first thing is you really need to focus on doing some basic math. We don't do a lot of math in the Spark program. It's about business. It's not about accounting. But But this is one of those times. It's really simple math, but you just need to be sure you pencil out a couple of things. And the reason this is so important, when I was in Silicon Valley working for a startup, the COO told me something that has always stuck with me. He was a fanatical operations person. And what he told me was that, look, it's great to have an idea of where you want to go, but we all know that whenever you plan something, planning goes awry all the time. It happens. But if you can't figure out how to get there on paper, if you can't even build a plan to get to where you want to go, that destination is completely unrealistic. And so the penciling things out helps us make sure it's a sanity check to make sure that we can get to where we want to go. Terry says, "We plan, God laughs." I love it. I love it. That's true. The counterpoint is Dwight Eisenhower. The plan is nothing. Planning is everything. That's something I believe. So by penciling out just a few simple things, we can really figure out if the plan we're putting in place has any chance at all of getting us the results that we want. So the first thing we have to do is we have to figure out our budgets for dollars that we can invest in marketing, and our budget for time that we can invest in marketing. And the second thing we have to do is figure out what results we actually need to get to hit our revenue target. So that usually boils down to the number of clients. Every one of your clients gives you a certain amount of revenue. You probably have or you can calculate the average revenue per client. So if you sign a client, about how much that's going to be in terms of revenue to your business. And then you can figure out how many leads it takes to get one client. In some cases, you might sign, out of 10 clients, you might sign 8 of them, in which case your conversion rate is 80%. In other cases, you might be able to sign, out of every 2 clients, you sign 1. So your conversion rate is 50%. And some other businesses, you might have to talk to 20 or 30 different potential clients to get 1. So your conversion rate's a lot less, 5% or less. So whatever it is, you have to figure out how many leads you need to get the number of clients you need to hit your revenue goal. Okay? That's our target, and then we have a certain budget for dollars and time that we have to allocate to achieve that target. And that's what we're trying to do. So the first thing we got to do is master the math. Second thing is we want to align by focusing on an earlier conversation or an earlier discussion called aligned marketing. Aligned marketing is going to give us the message, the market, and the medium to focus on our ideal client. The thing is, when we tend to do these planning exercises, there's a huge bias as humans to do what we're used to doing, to do what's been done before. What I want you to do as you go through this, it's absolutely critical, is to focus on your ideal client. So if we're talking about aligned marketing, it's that market to really focus on. That's the market you want to attack. And don't worry about the marketing you've been doing before. Just think about your ideal client, so your message, your market, and then what medium is going to convey your message to your market. If you can get those two things going and in sync, you're going to be in great shape. And don't be surprised if it's completely different than what you're doing now. The thing is, our businesses are where they're at because we're doing certain things. So if you want to improve your business, you're going to have to improve something. Oftentimes, we have to improve the kind of client that we're connecting with. And I know some of you on the call here today are focused on exactly that. How do you get a higher quality client? In order to do that, you're going to have to maybe do some things differently to attract those clients than what you're doing now. So your marketing is probably going to have to change. So improved business means improved client, means improved marketing. And by the way, just as an aside, if you have not filled out the Aligned Marketing worksheet and done that work, after this session, go back and work through it, because the message, market, and medium, getting those 3 things in sync are absolutely critical to building a strong marketing plan that's going to get you the clients you want. So number 3, I would love to say that at the end of this implementation hour, you'll be done with your marketing plan. Unfortunately, that's probably not the case. We're going to have to iterate it a couple of times. I just did this for myself last week using the template I'm showing you. In fact, what I'll do is I'll just upload my my example, the one that I did for myself for 2017, so you can all look at it as a template and as an example. But I iterated it a couple of times, and I slept on it. Not literally, but you know the idea. I slept on it and changed some things. So you're going to need to iterate it a couple of times, maybe as many as 3 times, because you're dialing in a couple of factors. You're trying to dial in your constraints with regards to your marketing dollars and the time you have available, and you're trying to make sure you can achieve the leads that you want with those marketing activities. So it's going to take a couple of iterations to really dial those in and make sure that your marketing tactics are choreographed and are aligned to attract the ideal client that you really want. So be patient, but after your 3rd time tweaking it, go ahead and stop, because I guarantee if you've tweaked it 3 times, all of you know your businesses, you're going to be good to go. Okay? So just be honest with your expected results. Make sure you're lined up to your budgets. And then after you've tweaked it a 3rd time, go ahead and stop. It should be integrated. You've done enough iterations. You're good to go, and you're good to start executing. So of those 3 keys, master the math, align and attract, integrate and iterate. What's most helpful to you? Go ahead and type it into the chat box now. Master your math, align to attract, or iterate and integrate. What would be most helpful to you? So we've got some votes coming in here. Align to attract. Thank you. Iterate, iterate, iterate. David says math. I hadn't considered enough the math. Money and time. Yes. And oftentimes time is way more valuable for us than money. Awesome. So let's just go ahead and get to work. What I'm going to do here, give me a minute, is I'm going to fire up my iPad. And I'm using a new app called Zoom, which I really like so far. And we're just connecting the iPad with the app. So what you should be able to see is my iPad. So just go ahead and type a Y in the chat box if you can see my iPad. Just want to do a quick tech check. Super. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. So let's go ahead and take a look at the 2-page marketing plan, and feel free to follow along with what you have. So the 2-page marketing plan is set up really, really simply. At the top here, you've got very, very basic information about your sales funnel, as we call it. Okay, you've got leads at the top. You've got clients at the bottom. And these leads travel through your sales process. Some fall out along the way, and some become clients. So that's the idea behind a sales funnel in brief. So your sales funnel starts with your revenue target. How much money do you want to make per year, right? Whether it's 4 million, whether it's 300K, whatever it happens to be. What is your revenue target? Per year. And then you figure out, if you were to attract ideal clients, what is going to be the average revenue per client? And this doesn't have to be exact. We're only looking for rough numbers. So, your best guess is going to be just fine. So what is your average dollar per client? And then again, it's just a simple math exercise, right? You take your revenue target, you divide it by revenues per client, and that's going to tell you the number of clients you need. Now this next part here, you might need to go back and look at your conversion rate. And the way you figure this out is your conversion rate equals the number of clients divided by your number of leads. So as an example, if I got 50 clients last year and I had 100 leads, my conversion rate would be 50%. Okay? By the way, if you need me to go over anything as I'm explaining this, let me know. But once I'm done explaining this, we're actually going to put it into use. If you don't have that information with you right now, if you don't know how many leads you had last year and how many clients you got from those leads, no problem. You can just go ahead and guess, and then you can check it later. Okay? And this is part of that iterate and integrate type portion of the exercise. So if you know your conversion rate and you know how many clients you need to get, it's pretty easy to figure out the number of leads that you need. It's simply your number of clients divided by your conversion rate. Okay? Make sense? The next part is a simple question. So on a scale of 1 to 10, well, sorry, let me take a step back here. So what we're trying to do is if we're targeting an ideal client, we want to make sure that everything we're doing from a branding perspective, that means all the advertising, your website, all those kinds of things, brochures if you have any, business cards, that those things align and are going to attract the client that you want. So this is just a quick self-rating on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being really poor, 10 being perfect. How well does your advertising align with your market and your message? And this goes back to that aligned marketing concept that we talked about earlier. And what, if anything, needs to be changed? Okay, so you just put a number here, let's say a 5, and then what needs to be changed, maybe website, maybe a brochure, something like that. Next thing, we want to find out what's been working for you. So what marketing has worked successfully in the past for your company? What has been your most successful marketing to date? And by this, we want to take a look at our best customers and basically just ask ourselves, how did they end up being our customer? And do we know why that is? Last question, which is the most impactful, which is, what made them choose you? And do you have actually any evidence to support that, or are you just guessing? And one thing that comes out of this oftentimes is you might need to go back and ask your best clients, why on earth did they choose to work with you? Okay. But really what we're trying to do here, in addition to that, is figure out what tactics have worked the best. So it might be referrals, might be speaking, what have you, right? But what tactics work the best for you? All right, last one. This is the money question. So how much are you willing to invest in marketing in both dollars and in hours? And both are really important. So this is usually dollars per year. And budgeted hours, you can look at it in terms of hours per week, which is how I like to look at it. But other people like to look at it in terms of hours per month or hours per year. But whatever it is, how much time can you budget for marketing? Can't be a lot. In most cases, it's going to be under 20 hours a week. So figure out how much time you actually can spare for marketing. Once we have this actually provides all the input. So page 1 gives us the input that we need. to move on to page 2, which is the output. And this is where we're actually going to put together our plan. So what we do is we come up with different tactics. And I would suggest that the first thing you start off with is the number one tactic that has worked for you from the previous page. So take that tactic, put it in as your number one. And then how will you implement each of these so they work amazingly well? Even better than they're working today. Or if you're not doing it, how would you implement it so it works really well? So one example might be, I'm not going to do it myself. I'm going to go hire somebody. I'm going to go hire an expert to do this for me. And if you do that, there's going to be a certain amount of money that's required for the year. You're going to need to put in a certain number of hours to make sure it works well. At the end of that, if all goes well, you're going to get some leads, right? That is the idea. Okay? Now this is all guesswork, but it's educated guesses. And this is where you're going to have to refine. You're going to have to refine your tactics so that you get the estimated leads that you want. The way this pencils out is the funds and hours required go straight back to your budget. Your estimated leads goes back to your goals. And that goal was right here. Okay? So the 3 big questions we want to answer are in bold. Number of quality leads needed, budgeted funds, budgeted hours. You're going to have to add these up and make sure they all pencil out. And then at the end, once you're done with this, it's really important that you think about your takeaways from your marketing plan and the actions that you're going to take as a result of that. It might be finding a new vendor to do something, or touching base with a number of different vendors. It might be something else, but you want to make sure you have 1 to 3 takeaways, and you want to make sure you have 3 to 5 actions. Okay? So, based on what we've covered so far, going through this marketing plan and everything, what's been most valuable for you? I'd just like to hear about it, so just type it into the chat box. What's been most valuable for you so far? And once you're done typing that in, get ready, because we're going to go ahead and do it together for you. So we're getting some things coming through here. Aligned marketing, need to go back and revisit that. Yep, that's really, really important, and it feeds into this. Conversion rate, thinking about conversion rate and number of leads required. Not tracking my leads, need to start. The plan and organization, I've been too loose about my marketing plan so far. Thinking about alignment, so great. Well, those are all good things, and let's go ahead and just get started. So I'm just going to finish erasing this here. And then we're going to do this together. So this is a pretty straightforward upfront part. So what I want you to do first is put in your revenue target. Just take a moment, write in your revenue target, and then once you're done writing in your revenue target, move on and put in the what the average revenue per ideal customer is for your business. Okay, so I want you to do 2 things right now. The first thing is, what's your revenue target? Number 1. And number 2, what's the average revenue per client? Just go ahead and take a minute and get that in place. And if you have any questions, just type it into the chat box. Once you're done, just go and type Y, and we'll move on to the next piece. Have about 30 seconds left. Again, just those first two, revenue and average revenue per client. About 10 seconds left. All right, looks like everyone's done. So let's move on. So we've done these first two bits. Now, pretty straightforward math. Take your revenue target, divide it by the average number of the average revenue per ideal client. So if this is 1, number 2, number 3 equals number 1 divided by number 2. Go and do that and write the value for number 3 onto your worksheet. Give you a moment to pull out your calculator and do that. Just take a few seconds. And when you're done, type a Y in the chat box. Okay, just a few more seconds here to wrap this up. Should be a pretty quick calculation. Okay. And if, by the way, if you're stuck, just go ahead and type the question that you have into the chat box. We'll stop and we'll get to it. So let's move on to number 4 here, which is your conversion rate. So this is number 4. And number 4 equals your clients or your customers divided by the number of leads. And you want to make sure you use the same amount of time. So what I like to do is look back over a year, look at how many total clients I signed over the past year, and then divide it by the number of leads I received. And then you can figure it out. My case, it's about 33% is my lead conversion. Everyone's is going to be something a little bit different. And again, if you don't know, just go and guess. So let's take a minute and let's work on this right here. And when you're done, just type a Y in the chat box or type in a question if you need it. All right, just take a few more seconds here and wrap it up. And again, if you don't have the data with you, no problem. You can go back and get it. What's important right now is you just take your best guess. It doesn't have to be over the past year. It could be over the past 6 months, past 3 months. You just want to make sure you get a decent sample size. So 1 month is probably not enough. Minimum, I would say, is probably 3 months of data to do something. Terry, looks like you have a question. Yeah, go ahead. So Terry's question is, what's a lead? That's a great question. Thank you for asking it, Terry. So a lead is a potential client that is at least open to having a conversation with you about becoming a client. So if you've talked to them or if you exchanged email with them, they're at least interested. They've expressed interest in becoming a client, and that's a lead. Yeah, Terry, you can. So your question there is meeting with people to find leads, need to calculate how many of those meetings I need to find the number of leads. Yeah, and that we can do later on if that's what you're doing. For now, all we're trying to do is trying to figure out how many leads you need, regardless of where they come from. For now, we're just trying to figure out how many leads it would actually need. But yeah, you're right. And we're going to do that second part, which is if you do the client acquisition system and you're meeting people to get leads, how many leads do you get from those meetings? And then how many meetings do you need to do? Yeah. Okay, we good? So the money part here. Thanks, Terry. I appreciate that clarification. The money part here is going to be the number of quality leads that we actually need. And that's going to equal the number of clients multiplied by our conversion rate. And let me just put some numbers in here. So let's say, just for argument's sake, I wanted to get 100 clients. And let's say my conversion rate was 25%. So 100 times 25 means I need to be going for 400 leads. So my marketing has got to produce 400 leads in order for me to sign 100 clients. Okay? Go ahead and do something similar for you. We want to figure out this number because that's going to be part of our cross-check to make sure our marketing plan is going to produce what it needs to produce. Okay? The next thing I'd like you to do is just do this part here. What I'd like you to do is go ahead and rate how well aligned all your advertising is. And advertising, again, is your business card, your brochures, your website. If you have a business where you have trucks, it could be the wrapping on your trucks. But on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being really poor, 10 being ideal and perfect, how well does your advertising align with your market and your message? Just go ahead and put that number in the box. And the second piece of it, the what needs to be changed piece, that you can do offline. So for example, let's say I was doing okay, but not great. I had to make some changes, I think. Maybe I would give myself a 6, and then I would figure out the rest after the call. Next question, what marketing has worked most successfully for you or your company in the past? And specifically, we're talking about your best customers. So what's worked to produce your best customers? What's worked to produce the bulk of your customers? We want both of those answers. So in my case, it might be referrals. For a lot of our boutique businesses, referrals are oftentimes our best source of ideal customers. But it might be something else. Maybe I have a different kind of business. And maybe direct mail has produced the best clients. I have one client who actually has gone through a bidding process as a certified minority business. That's produced their best clients. So it might be different for each of you, but what marketing tactic has worked best for you? Just go ahead and type that in, or write that in there. I'm just going to go back to referrals. Okay, now money question, what is your budget? So budgeted funds, I'd suggest you look at that over the course of a full year. So dollars per year. Let's say you wanted a budget, I don't know, $5,000 per year in marketing. And let's say that you wanted a budget about 10 hours per week for marketing activities for you, okay? And that's, by the way, really important. The budgeted hours, that's your time. If you have a salesperson or someone like that whose full-time job it is to go out and do business development, that's great. But what we're talking about here in budgeted hours is your time as the owner of the business. Again, if you're not sure what your dollars and what your hours are going to be, I would suggest you just put a couple of things in. As a rule of thumb, if you're marketing less than 10 hours a week, there's probably room for improvement, no matter what business you're in. If you're marketing over 20 hours a week, you might be marketing too much. So somewhere between 10 and 20 is usually the sweet spot for most businesses. If you're an attorney, you do a lot of transactional work, 10 hours a week is ideal. But depending on your business, it could be probably either closer to 20 or maybe around 15, whatever it happens to be. But figure out the hours per week that you need that you're going to spend in marketing. For me as a business coach consultant, by the way, it's about 20 hours a week. So like I said, everyone's different. Okay, so if you've got these two numbers here, your funds and your hours, go and type a Y in the chat box. Thank you. Okay. Now let's go to tactics. This is where it all comes together. So what I'd like you to do, from this section here, I'd like you to take this and drop it right in here, okay? That's going to be your number one tactic. It's been your best. You're just going to play your strengths and use it again. So that goes here, and what I'd like you to do is fill out how will you implement it so it works really well? What else can you do to make it work even better? And how much money is required for this? How much time is required for this? And how many leads do you think you'll get? So why don't you take some time to work on that and then just type a Y in the chat box when you're done, and we'll move on. Terry has a question. Yeah, Terry, what's up? That's a great question, Terry. Is it okay if I take you off mute so you can ask that? Hey, Terry, you there?
Yes.
Terrific.
You tell me.
It was a good question. Would you mind repeating it?
So the question is, if my best tactic is referrals, but that comes from networking, so is that not redundant? So that's what I'm thinking is networking and referrals two different tactics, or are they the same tactic?
If your referrals come from networking, then they are indeed redundant, and networking is your tactic. What I would suggest when you're talking about networking is you break out your networking groups individually. So if you're in Provisors, that's one. If you're in the Council of Business Advisors, that's another one. If you're in BNI, that's a third one. And that way you can start to figure out which networking groups are producing for you.
Okay, that's helpful.
Great. Thank you.
You shut me up again now?
I'm working on it. All right. So in the interest of time, we kind of need to roll through this. But what I'd like for you to do is continue to add tactics as we go. And what you're going to be doing at the end here is you're going to be figuring out that the funds and the hours match your budget, and that the estimated leads produces what you need it to produce. Okay. making sure all three of these numbers line up is critical to having the marketing plan work for you. And it might take a couple of iterations to get it all dialed in to where you're actually checking all three of those boxes. But it's really important to do that. So just as we wrap up, I'd love to hear from you. What's been most valuable from you what's been most valuable for you from everything we've talked about today? What's an insight you've had or something you really appreciated from our time that we spent here together? Go ahead and just type it into the chat box. And then I've got one more thing for you, and then I'll let you get back to your day. So a couple of messages coming back. So just looking at the overall structure of approaching this. Okay, that's good. And then assessing which marketing pieces are working and which are not, and how to always get better. Awesome. Great. So we've got one more thing to do, which is I need you to complete this plan. So there's a really simple way that we track accountability in Spark, and that's called the weekly project plan. The way it works is that the plans are due every Friday, and you send in your plans with a few things that you want to do for the following week. So our plans for next week are due in a couple of days. They're due on Friday. And then at the end of that week, you come back and report on how you did. So one of the things that you should put into your project plan for next week is to send me your 2-page marketing plan. So email that over to me, or if you've written it out, just go ahead and take a picture, and you can send a picture to me. I'd love to see what you came up with. And if you run into any problems or you feel like you're stuck in some way, just go ahead and book in for a 15-minute triage call with me, and we'll make sure you get unstuck. Your marketing plan is good to go, and you can start to execute it as of the first of the year, or whenever you want to use it. I will have this all up and online in a day or so. It's going to have this recording along with the 2-page marketing plan worksheet and a template. So I'll just put up my plan for you so you can have an idea of what a completed plan looks like. Okay. Everyone, thank you so much for your time. Have a terrific rest of the day and a great week ahead. So excited we were able to do this, and I look forward to talking to you all soon. Take care.